doing this. This is Emily with Telltale. I am just chilling here, drinking coffee, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about the book #Activism by Sarah J. Jackson, Moya Bailey, Brooke Foucault, and Brooke Foucault Wells. I hope I said everybody's name correctly. This particular book is about networks of race and gender justice, particularly surrounding the social media platform of Twitter. Oh, excuse me. So, this book is not a typical thing that Telltale usually reviews. This is a nonfiction. The reason I wanted to review it, one, was because I felt like it was super interesting and relevant to the times we live in. We live in a very unique time right now where social media has a lot of political, legislative, and social justice influence right now. And it's proving to be such an influence that, I mean, it's created, like, basically the Black Lives Matter movement and the organization itself actually started through hashtags, which I think is really incredible and unique for our period of time right now, that we can use social media in order to build entire organizations, especially considering that it's mostly remote. So yeah, the reason I was interested in this is, one, I used to have a blog about computer ethics and ways that people ethically and unethically use technology in order to be able to make world change, for better or for worse. We don't know yet. The thing is, technology has developed so quickly, and social media has had such a fast and hard influence that we aren't really going to fully understand how much it has influenced our social climate. Especially this in particular in the United States, until long after these movements are over or have built up at least some kind of, for lack of a better word, network, paper trail history. So that kind of is what this book does. It goes into certain hashtag movements, how they began, why they began, how they became popular, how they became trends, and then what social changes and legislation they influenced. This book was really eye-opening, one, because from a design standpoint, it's very, very interesting. There's some really great infographics in here about how certain hashtags were started and shared. There's a lot of name dropping. Here's one such infographic that was really nicely done. This is about the hashtag Girls Like Us movement. And what this book does is it just kind of visually tells you and walks you through the events that occurred, or the tweets that were tweeted, that started certain movements and discussions about race and gender justice. It kind of separates the two. It kind of starts with gender justice, has kind of one of these things that was a little bit of an in-between where it related to both race and gender justice, and then leads into race justice. One of the things I really appreciated about this book is I am not a consistent Twitter user, but I know how Twitter works. And it actually really opened my eyes to movements that I didn't even know existed, mainly because I, as you can see, I am a white female. And a lot of my network did not touch the same networks that hit on these, especially the racial justice parts. Like gender justice, I get a lot of tweets about, and I investigate those when I'm on Twitter. But it was just interesting because you see these movements and these trends that had occurred while I had been very active on Twitter for a while, and I never saw them. And that speaks, I think, volumes to my own privilege, the kind of things that I'm interested in, and the kind of things that my peer group and the people I follow talk about, and how unique these hashtags were to certain groups. and to certain individuals who chose, like, a lot of the time it name drops a lot of actors and actresses, and I don't follow a lot of actors and actresses who touch on these subjects, and a lot of them were helping to perpetuate these hashtags and these movements to provide awareness for things that were going on. So it's just interesting to see how basically social media has its merits, has its individual groups, and how sometimes you get missed in those groups just because of who you choose to follow, what you choose to talk about. So that was really interesting. That was a personal thing that I noticed, that I was very isolated from a lot of this conversation just because my lack of understanding of being African American specifically is one of the things they talk about, and how a lot of this stuff happened and I didn't even know it. Like, there's so many other, like, hashtags and things like that, and that just, like, speaks volumes to me about the state of social media, and, like, how it caters so much algorithmically to the individual, and how easy it is to just ignore really big issues that are going on if it's not something you're interested in. So yeah, that was a really interesting personal observation I had made. One of the things that I thought was really interesting too that this book brought up is that it is actually, when you're on Twitter, a majority of its users are actually minorities. There are not a lot of people who use specifically Twitter as a platform that are of another ethnicity. And I think that was from a census taken 2019. So this is a very recent book. And it brings up a lot of great issues, a lot of things that I would have never known about had I not read about it. And just seeing how social pressure can change political views. Like, we're seeing that with the Breonna Taylor thing right now. There are laws being passed now to try and prevent those kinds of things from happening, even though no matter how you feel, it's still very controversial because they want people to actually convict the officers responsible, and that has not yet happened as of this video being filmed, but no matter how you feel about it, legislation is happening to prevent it in the future. So the social pressure has actually called for this mob mentality, which has kind of forced the hand of legislation. We saw that in, a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement has just really used hashtags on Twitter to build this mob mentality and really get the world involved. And to try and make social change, and to try and influence laws, influence social justice. And I just think that's unique. A lot of people disagree with it. They think that mob mentality isn't going to work. They think that the justice system should be allowed to do all of that on its own and let the process happen. But we do have this unique opportunity now with social media to become part of the conversation and to start becoming influential in it. One of the things a lot of people talk about too, that I have observed personally, and I think this book kind of touches on as well, is because we are able to communicate information faster, we can also communicate bad news faster. And a lot of people say, oh, the world's getting worse, and I personally don't believe that's true. I believe the world has always had these problems, especially the United States, with race and gender injustice. I think we've always had these problems. I think, everywhere in the world has these problems, but the fact of the matter is it feels like it's getting worse because we are able to communicate it faster. So we're just getting bombarded with bad news all the time. That's always been happening. It's just now it's news and it's communicated really quickly. So that's kind of one of the things that this #activism book touches on a little bit. They don't come out and say it, but it's one of those things that's easily observed from the way that they communicate the information, is that the world's always been this bad. It's just now it's easier to get caught and communicate it. So it's just a really interesting read. If you are a big in statistics, if you like computer ethics, if you're an avid Twitter user, you can kind of see different very pivotal social media history moments in this book as it's communicated. And of course, it's very recently published. The information is within the last year. So, or within, 2019 is where a lot of their data information ends. So you're going to get really great, relevant information about social media and its influence specifically on these race and gender issues. I just thought it was great because it also does it does little interviews, like you'll see these little boxes in here where they interview specific people who were pivotal to the movement or who had initiated the hashtag, and their perspective on a lot of it was I didn't know it was going to blow up that big, but I was angry. And it just shows that anger is a powerful tool for change. You don't get revolutions without someone getting pissed. So it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic. Again, really great infographics on how things were networked and who made what popular. They're really, really interesting. They have great visualization descriptions underneath for the figures so you can understand what you're looking at. It's really easily digested. They do screenshots too of specific tweets that were influential in perpetuating the movement. Just a really well done and designed book. It is very concise. So, I mean, as much as there would be things that I would like to know way more about, it does a really good job of giving you a summary of the movement. And of course, there's all these little nuances and things about the movements that will probably come up much later in the future when we have more time to study and analyze them. But as of right now, I felt like this was a really great read, very influential, very interesting, and easily digested. So it gives you a lot of personal dialogue as well. Like I said, the interviews are great, but it also gives you kind of a, here's the background story, and kind of leads into the information. It presents it really well, so it's not as dry as it could be. So I definitely recommend this book. I have to say this is probably one of the best books I've read right now in 2020, especially with our social and political climate as it is. This was really eye-opening for me, so I definitely recommend it. I think people need to know the history of how social media really influences a lot of our social climate, our political climate, and our world in general. I just think it's really fascinating stuff, and anybody who uses technology or social media should know about it. So yeah, definitely a 5 out of 5 stars, would recommend. Yeah, so let me know if you've ever read #Activism or any similar books that kind of touch on social media and its influence. I would love to hear your comments and your thoughts. Go ahead and like and subscribe to Telltale for some of this and more of our fiction reviews, and we will see you next time.